Do you often find yourself looking for external sources of guidance, support, or even meaning and direction? Well, what if I told you there was one relationship that could show you not only your true purpose, your true being, but also could invite you into an understanding of the secrets of creation itself? And what if I told you that every single person you've ever met, every single person who's ever walked this earth, has access to this relationship from the moment that they're born until the day that they die? From a very early age, I was interested in activities of the body. So ballet and dance and gymnastics, and then later athletics and netball. By the time I was 8 years old, I was a British champion, and as a teenager, I had performed at a national level for many different sports. And that all changed for me when I underwent a botched tonsillectomy operation. And from that event, I had a decade of health challenges. And it wasn't necessarily the health challenges themselves, it was that impacted me the most. It was the loss of identity. It was the loss of value, self-worth, meaning, the loss of identity, who I was within my community and my family and my friends and my school. That loss was a big blow at that age, and when I was well on my way to healing from the repercussions of that operation, into my 20s, I found spirituality, and it was the perfect remedy. Really, it was the perfect thing to fill that hole. So I began to gather methods and practices and teachers and communities and anything really I could find. And all those things acted as a trail of breadcrumbs that led me to yoga. And I had practiced a few different methods, but I just didn't find them interesting until I came across this tradition and this different way of practicing that I currently still practice in. And through those teachings, from my very first class, I began again to have this glimpse of that elation I remembered from my childhood of having a body that was strong and healthy and vital and that could perform great feats, the pure joy of physicality. I began to remember to have glimpses of that through my work. And so it was such a nostalgic, but also intoxicating feeling that I really dedicated myself to this practice. And we went through the pandemic and just after really finding this practice. And so I lived on my own for a lot of that, and I practiced yoga for days and days, for many hours every single day. And I was so amazed at the transformation that I saw in my body. And again, it was like this recovery of that joy that I had known as a child, which I hadn't felt in a long time. And that was one thing. But then a little later, when I began working more with children, I studied trauma and the impacts of trauma on the body. I had this new lens and this whole vocabulary for understanding how the body responds to certain events and how we are formed from a very young age, how the body is formed from a very young age to react to different triggers in our environment. And so having that awareness alongside my regular yoga practice just formed this like delicious mix of health and safety and compassion and discipline. And I felt like my body really thrived in that. I felt like I was seeing the true potential, just glimpses of it, but really the true potential of this physical body and what it's really capable of. And nothing else, I have not experienced anything else that compares to that. And yet, we live in a mind dominated culture. And yet, I have tendencies when I feel dysregulated, when I feel lost or confused, I will try to fill the void of my feelings with mental stimulation. And it's easy to get lost in the world of the mind. But I've never found it sustaining. I've never found that it endures, the comfort it provides endures in the same way that the body does. And it can, in a way, be an opiate. It can disguise the true messages that the body is telling us. And I firmly believe, having experienced chronic illness and chronic pain and chronic fatigue, I firmly believe that every single symptom we experience is a message from our bodies to us. Every single symptom is a healthy adaptation of your body to stresses in your environment. And yes, there are other influences like toxicity and certain poisons that can have an impact on our body. But I think that there is a war happening against the body. And I think when we have a cultural lens of suppressing symptoms, of operating, of chopping up the body and changing it to some bizarre aesthetic that someone has decided is the ultimate goal. And then even more subtle warfare in terms of the cultural narrative that the body's responses are somehow wrong, that the body's nature, the perfection of nature has made these incredible mistakes and that we are just victims to some external pressure. I myself have partaken in that. Of course, I have. I've had operations. I've abused my body. I've changed it. I've felt that it wasn't good enough. I've lived inside that narrative, and I've also more recently experienced the opposite. What the body can be when it's treated with dignity and respect, and also what we can cultivate within ourselves. All the things, all the true values: discipline, compassion, kindness, awareness. These traits, shall we say, are also cultivated when we commit to listening to our bodies, to building a positive relationship with our bodies, to moving the anchor of trust from the external back to the internal. And I think yoga is the practice for that. I found out this year that the word zygote, so the the original cell from which we all emerged, that connects us not only to the source of creation, but that connects all of us. We all share that same beginning, every single one of us. And that word zygote actually shares the same etymological root as the word yoga. The yoga is the pathway to beautify the body. And through the body, we can connect to the whole of life. We can connect to every single person in our environment and beyond. We can connect to our whole lineage of ancestry, back and forward. We can connect to every single aspect of sentient life on this earth, the beauty of nature. All of that is accessible to us through our bodies, because our bodies hold the intelligence of that. So I suppose this is just a small reminder. It is very easy to get swept away with the expectations of others and the expectations of ourselves, really. And rather than just have our focus be on communicating honestly with our experience, and the body is the tool, shall we say, that we can use to build that honest communication in our lives. And it leads to health. And health leads ultimately to freedom and joy and ease. All things that I want in my life.